Hi, it's James. I'm going to be reading Chapter 8 today of Night Flying by Rita Murphy. By the way, we're more than halfway through. It's not a very long book. No, Chapter 7, not Chapter 8. Chapter 7. Overnight, the temperature has dropped, and a heavy frost covers the garden. It amazes me that the Swiss chard and kale are standing tall and green and the pumpkins bright orange under a coat of white, while all the other vegetables are rotting and brown at their feet. I woke up this morning with the most delicious feeling of freedom. No school, today or tomorrow. I'm allowed to stay home to finish my dress, help with final preparations for my initiation, and relax, although grandmother is not big on the relaxation part of this equation. Before leaving for Burlington to visit her lawyer early this morning, she wrote down a long list of things for me to do, which she posted on the refrigerator. The first chore is take out compost. I take out the compost every morning, so it's not necessary to put it on any list, but grandmother does not like to leave anything to chance. The compost bin is next to the pumpkin patch. My leather shoes are quickly covered with flakes of white. It's time for snow, but this year I'm not ready. I do not want to solo in a blizzard. Flying through a snowstorm is much more frightening than driving through one. It can be deadly if you don't know where you are. There's no moon to guide you. You can fly too low, you can get too close to a silo or a stand of pines, to electrical wires. The sound of a truck coming down the driveway shakes me from my thoughts. It is rare where we live to have visitors. The only people who come on any regular basis are the workmen grandmother hires. From the sound of the engine, I'd say it's Mr. Gowan. His truck makes a little putt-putt like the engine of a Volkswagen Bug. The noise of the engine grows louder, and Mr. Gowan's red truck appears from behind the giant willow tree at the bend in the road. He brought his dog, Duke, today. Duke is a big old hound. Standing in the bed of the truck, trying to keep his balance, Duke is wearing a bright fluorescent orange vest. It is tied around him with baling twine. It's hunting season, and no dog is safe, not even here. Grandmother posted our land 10 years ago, and Mr. Gowan replaces the signs with a new warning each year. No hunting or trapping on these premises. No trunting or happing. No hunting or trapping on these premises. It doesn't seem to make much of a difference, though. There were generations of family hunting on this land long before a Hanson ever bought it. Beginning in October, hunters walk the border of the meadow. They park their pickups at the end of the road. Grandmother tries to stop them every year, sending poor Mr. Gowan out to talk to them. I bet he just tells them to keep a safe distance from the house or to come back on Saturday when the old lady isn't home. I'm glad I'll have soloed before rifle season starts. There's no danger in the air at night, but I'll be sleeping in the reserve, and there's a chance of duck hunters just before dawn. Since I eat ham sandwiches, I guess I shouldn't judge hunters, but it always makes me shiver, the thought of shooting any winged creature out of the sky. I placed the compost bucket on the porch and waved to Mr. Gowan. "Sweet Georgia Brown!" he yells out the window, extending his long, lanky arm. He parks the truck and cuts the engine. Duke stands in back, his mournful face staring at me. "Come over here and let me look at you, girl." I walk over. Turn around. Ooh, what a sight! Makes me want to cry to see such beauty before these tired old eyes. Mr. Gowan's eyes are large and sparkling and not at all tired. I laugh and give him a soft punch on the sleeve of his flannel shirt. "Frost is on the pumpkins, Georgia Brown." "I know, Mr. Gowan," I say, frowning. "What's the matter, honey? You don't like the snow? Not becoming a Flatlander, are you? Gonna fly to Florida for a sign of a flake? Go live with the old folks?" "Maybe," I say. "Maybe I'll fly south with the geese one year, and I won't ever come back to nowhere Vermont. You know, I don't think you're so sweet after all. I'm gonna start calling you Sour Georgia Brown." "That's okay by me," I say. He shakes his head and picks at his bottom teeth with a toothpick. "Old lady around?" he asks, lowering his voice. He gets out of the truck, walks to the back, and lets Duke out. "No," I say. "She had to go down to Burlington on some business." Good, 'cause I got some news for you." "Really? What?" I ask. "I hear Emmett Fogg's got a gelding he don't want." "How come he doesn't want it? What's wrong with it?" I ask. "Hold on to your pants, girl. Don't go finding fault where there ain't none. Nothing wrong with it. A beauty. I seen it. Emmett's stable is booked, no room. Maybe he'll let you take him for the winter. You got space in the barn. Lord knows you got plenty of first-cut hay. Fogg won't let you take him unless he knows you can care for him right. Can I see him? I ask. Mr. Gowan looks around, whispers. Well, that's school. What's the old lady going to say? I don't have to go to school today, and Grandmother won't say anything. She's not here. I just want to look, Mr. Gowan. Please, will you take me? I'll take you, honey, he laughs, after I fix the gate. I bring in the compost bucket, put it by the sink, and run upstairs. My room is a mess. I dig out a pair of riding jeans and boots from the bottom of my closet, extra socks, a plaid shirt. I return to the kitchen, grab a basket of carrot muffins from the counter, and head out to the truck. I wait for Mr. Gowan to finish. I know he didn't come all the way out here just to fix the gate. He usually waits until Grandmother has accumulated a half-dozen odd jobs, then puts them together and makes one trip. He came to tell me about the horse. Ever since I was a little girl, Mr. Gowan has been coming out here, taking me for rides to see horses and feeding me chocolates. I have attended every horse show in the Mad River Valley thanks to Mr. Gowan, who drives me all the way down there so I can smell that smell. Horses and new hay, the smell of wildness and freedom. That was quick, I say, as Mr. Gowan eases himself into the seat next to me. He is a tall, wiry man with a slightly crooked spine, so his right leg is shorter than his left. He has a thick wave of salt and pepper hair that sweeps across the top of his head, long black sideburns, and gentle blue eyes. I'm leaving Duke here until we get back. That nose of his will only get him into trouble around the stables. He reaches over and picks up a muffin. Ah, some squirrel food. Mr. Gowan thinks we eat like rodents, picking at our seeds and nuts. He takes a bite of the muffin and starts the truck. That grandmother of yours has me out here for the smallest of jobs. Things you could do, or one of your pretty aunts. I notice he doesn't suggest Mama. It is well known that Mama is not in a position to be fixing things or lifting heavy objects. She is allowed to cook, but even then I have to help her take down the heavy cast-iron skillets from their hooks above the wood stove. You know what the trouble is? There ain't no men around here. Never have been. I don't understand why Myra, he clears his throat, why the old lady doesn't have any on board. I shrug my shoulders. Who knows? No men, no horses. I turn my head and watch the fields pass by outside the truck window, brown and dry, waiting to be covered in their winter blanket. Has she always been like that, Mr. Gowan? Afraid so, honey, at least as long as I've known her. She's a little on the tight side. I always thought it had to do with your great-grandmother. She was a hard woman, single-minded, ran this place like an army barracks. I guess the old feller was too busy to do anything besides make those crazy inventions of his, so the work fell to her, and then in the end he got all the recognition. He stops then, like he said too much. Ain't none of my business no more, honey. He finishes his muffin, wipes his mouth on his sleeve. So what do you think you'll do with this gelding if you get him? Where are you going to keep him? In your room? Up in the widow's peak? He chuckles. The widow's walk, I correct him. I have some ideas, I say. Mr. Gowan hums a little. He puts the truck into fourth gear, and it gives a little jerk. Yep, what you ladies need out here is a permanent man. Emmett Fogg's place is outside the village of Garrison. 100 acres of rolling hills, pasture, a farmhouse, and stables enough for a dozen horses. I drove by once when Eve and I came out here to press cider with my kindergarten class up the street at Ralph Ryman's. Ralph was the richest kid in my school. The Rymans invited the whole class to try out their new cider press on the back lawn that day. They live in a beautiful brick farmhouse with a porch wrapping around most of it, little stone pathways that lead to gardens in the woods. Gardens with springs and statues of the Buddha or marble gargoyles staring down into their own reflections beside small fountains. Ralph's parents are artists. His mother travels to New York every other week to check on her paintings and galleries. She is a tall, thin, glamorous woman with blunt-cut hair that frames her face. She is not beautiful in the way I am used to a woman being beautiful. She is angular and severe in her loose-fitting silk pants and blousy shirts. She stands out in the corner market down the road with her bright red lipstick smelling of oil paint and expensive cologne. Ralph's father, on the other hand, is a shy, awkward man, balding and stocky. He could be an ordinary Vermonter with his worn shirts and work boots until he opens his mouth. He has a thick German accent with a slight lisp. He sculpts statuary, angels, lions, goddesses. I always thought Ralph was lucky. He had both his parents, and they were always doing things together. I never saw Ralph without one of them when he was little. He never seemed lonely. Never. I told Eva this once, and she said, "You can never tell, Georgia, if someone is lonely or not. Just because Ralph has a family that's still together doesn't mean he never gets lonely. Maybe he would rather change places with you." "I doubt it," I told Eva. Maybe it was the way Mrs. Ryman always scooped Ralph up in her arms like he was the most delicious thing she'd ever seen, or the fact that Mr. Ryman held his wife's hand in public, but they all seemed to fit together nicely. It was a freezing October day, the day Eva and I went to the Rymans. Eva wore a silk dress with leather flats, which got all wet from the dew on the grass. She was miserable. I could tell by the way she held her lips together too tightly. Her hair started to kink in the rain, and Eva hates her hair to get kinky. She will do almost anything to prevent it, including wearing rags soaked in olive oil on her head all night long. There wasn't much she could do about it that day, though. I thought Eva had dressed up just to accompany me on my first field trip. Now I know it was because she wanted Mrs. Ryman's opinion of her paintings. She figured she had one chance to meet her, so she piled 8 canvases into the back of Beulah. They never got around to talking about art, though, because Ralph's index finger got caught in the barrel of the cider press, and he had to be whisked away to the medical center in Burlington, leaving us all standing around with Mrs. Johnson, our kindergarten teacher, who spent an hour explaining to us how dangerous cider presses can be. I cannot see the Ryman's place from the road. Like most of the houses in this part of Garrison, it's hidden in the trees at the end of a long driveway. Mr. Gowan has turned on WWRK, the country station. Tammy Wynette is belting out a song. "How can you stand that kind of music, Mr. Gowan?" I ask him. "I love it, honey. Why, country music is the only music where you can lose your lover, your dog, your house, and your car all in the course of one song. Makes my life not seem so hard. Of course, you don't know about that yet. You're too young to have it hard." I roll my eyes. "That's what you think," I say. Mr. Gowan smiles. He smiles a lot. He seems completely unaware that he is missing 3 teeth in the front of his mouth. He just keeps opening it wide, one of his most endearing qualities. We pull into the long driveway of the Fogg stables and park in the wide horseshoe-shaped parking lot. "Well, Sour Georgia, let's see what we can see." Emmett Fogg is standing at the entrance of the stables. He seems surprised to see us, like he was expecting someone else. His arms are folded across his broad chest. He is tall and forbidding, dark. He nods as we approach. "Gowan," he says. Mr. Gowan looks at the ground, suddenly shy. "This is the girl," he mumbles. I look at him, horrified. This is the girl? It sounds like he wants Mr. Fogg to check my flanks and consider me for a place in one of his stalls. This is how you introduce me to a man who owns a horse I desperately want, I think. I step forward and extend my hand. "I'm Georgia Hanson." Emmett Fogg does not take it. He looks over my head and turns to the stables. "The horse is in here," he says over his shoulder as he walks away. "You can go in yourself, have a look. I have to make a call. He's the 4th stall on the right." "Friendly sort, isn't he?" Mr. Gowan whispers. I give him a look. I haven't forgiven him yet for his poor introduction. We enter the stable. It's beautiful, with a large tack room. I glance inside at the saddles and harnesses neatly hung on the walls while Mr. Gowan finds the stall. "Over here, Georgia Brown." The name Rusty is printed in large block letters on an index card, held by a thumbtack. I see that all the other horses have brass nameplates adorning the front of their stalls. It is clear that Rusty was never intended for a long stay at the Fogg stables. He puts his head over the door of the stall, a large, gentle, elegant head. I can tell at first glance that he is definitely not a Rusty, a name given by someone who did not know this horse. He is more of a rich nut color, like one of the old photographs tinged in brown. Sepia. I look over at Mr. Gowan. "What did I tell you? Isn't he a beauty?" He pulls a carrot out of his pocket. He knew I'd jump at a chance for a horse like this. So sure of it, he filled his pockets with carrots. Emmett Fogg comes inside. He is carrying a cellular phone. He stands beside me. "You think you can handle him? Gowan informs me you can ride. And you have a place. Good dry barn?" I nod. "I can only give you food for a month. You'll have to take care of the rest. Come spring you can return him here, or we can work at a price." I have a mare coming up from Tennessee next week, so I'll have to know soon. Yes, I say before I can stop myself. Yes, I'll take him, Mr. Fogg. I'll take him this weekend. He'll be just fine with me. Don't you want to think it over, honey? Mr. Gowan asks, concerned. Run it by a few people at home first? No, Mr. Gowan. I think I can speak for my family and say we'd be pleased to take Sepia, for that's the name I have decided on. That's Chapter 7 of Night Flying by Rita Murphy. Bye.